If you've got the back end draft slot in your fantasy drafts, I have the perfect draft strategy right here for you at RotoWire. We're going to hop into it. And again, you're going to have the turn right here. And I'm assuming there's no third round reversal. So we're going to just do it straight here. From the first round, I want some of these pass catchers. Now, I know that Christian McCaffrey and Ashton Jeanty are both enticing, but I think that especially for their first round, their ceilings might be a little capped, especially Ashton Jeanty, who's a rookie. We've done this before. We were drafting Bijan incredibly high, and we didn't even know exactly what his volume is going to be. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be a bad player, but I don't quite expect him to be Saquon Barkley right out the gate his first season. That leaves Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Nabers, Brock Bowers, and if I am going to go running back, instead of going Christian McCaffrey, why don't I just save myself the years and maybe insulate myself from the injury risk of an older running back by just taking in, let's say, an injury-prone young running back. They both are on teams with shaky offensive lines. Now, I will say Brock Purdy's a better quarterback than Tua Tagovailoa, but that doesn't matter as much when you're thinking about dump-offs. Moreover, for Miami, they just got rid of Jonnu Smith, who opens up stuff for both Jalen Waddle and Achane. And we've already heard Mike McDaniel talk highly about Achane. So if you're thinking about high volume and someone who's already produced and shown when they're on the field that they can have game-breaking numbers, I think Achane's upside is just as high as CMC's. And I think the injury risk is virtually the same if you think about age and who Davante Achane is. But back to the main point here. We are at the turn. Let's say that normal cases, I'm going to take Brian Thomas Jr. or Malik Nabers or whatever wide receiver falls to me at this point. I'll even reach for Ladd McConkey. You want Brock Bowers because you get positional advantage at tight end. Why is this important? For starters, the depth at tight end is shallow. Moreover, the high end depth is shallow. If you're not going to get Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, or George Kittle, the chances are anywhere that you're drafting towards these middle rounds, or at least until you get to round 11, 12, 13, you're losing any advantage and most likely harming your team because you're taking a player who isn't going to outscore your wide receiver or running back that you're taking around that same range. And why doesn't this principle apply to someone like Brock Bowers or Trey McBride? It's easy because they are the only ones who are putting up wide receiver 1 numbers. If you just look at Brock Bowers, and I'm going to give you the case of why just Brock Bowers, he was wide receiver 3 in receptions. Now, I don't mean he was the tight end 3. He was the third tight end receptions. I mean, if you look at everyone who caught a pass last year, he would have been the wide receiver 3 in total receptions. If we do the same exercise with just receiving yards, he would be the wide receiver 8. Points per game, wide receiver 15. And one reason why he's only that low, despite being 3rd in receptions and 8th in yards, it's because of the touchdown equity. Now, they brought in Ashton Jeanty, Pete Carroll, Tom Brady's now in that front office. They even got some new pass catchers. Geno Smith's in town. There is no reason why this offense can't be significantly better and thus increasing the touchdown equity for Brock Bowers. So yes, I think there could be positive regression solely from the red zone targets alone, which gives you a lot of meat on the bone. If you look at what Travis Kelce was, it's the same scenario. You have the top 5 wide receiver upside in a position that no one else has. So when you think about shallow depth, if you think about having a wide receiver, you are both playing keep away from your other league mates by having one of 3 players that give you that upside, and you're able to put it in a position that no one else is. That is the ideal advantage that you want from your roster at this spot. Now let's fast forward. You're at rounds 3 or 4. And let's say if you draft like me, I'm not always going to take Achane, and I'm always going to prioritize someone like Malik Nabers, Brian Thomas Jr. Malik Nabers could be the wide receiver 1 just on volume alone. Here's where you could start thinking about running back. Breece Hall's been a favorite around here, or you could continue to get your pass catchers. Personally, I like to have 3 strong pass catchers, or I like to focus on having positional upside at 3 separate positions. So technically you can have wide receiver, tight end, and have 2 people you think that can beat their ADP and finish at the top of their positions. Right now you can get Davante Adams, or if you didn't get tight end, George Kittle, who I have in that same group or tier below as McBride and Bowers, Rashee Rice, and then here's why I said you can get positional advantages at multiple positions. It's Jalen Hurts. Now, according to our ADP, sometimes Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are gone. If they're here, I'm taking him. But Jalen Hurts is being severely slept on. He's someone who rushed for a lot of touchdowns. The tush push went nowhere. And I think what we saw in the Super Bowl and in the playoffs, when they try to take Saquon Barkley away from this offense, Jalen Hurts is still effective through the air because he has A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert. Quarterback is an interesting position because a lot of people, and especially when we were playing fantasy a long time ago, and this was a valid strategy, you were better off taking a quarterback later than earlier. Now, fast forward, we have these rushing QBs. The scoring is insane. So now you have the opportunity to have the #1 fantasy scorer on your roster. Keep it simple, stupid. If you want the top scorer, go ahead and take them. So you could easily have the wide receiver 1, tight end 1, and the QB 1 on your team and have a pretty buff roster that you can hammer more wide receiver and, more importantly, fill out those running backs later. Now I want to talk about the wide receivers briefly and why I'm basically taking a wide receiver and then whatever other position back to back. I don't really want to think about wide receiver, especially in redraft, and who I'm going to put in my lineup. I want these players who get open and are game changers regardless of the matchup. Davante Adams and Rashee Rice fit the bill. Davante Adams from his individual talent, Rashee Rice from the situation. Now, I'm not saying that Rashee Rice isn't a good player, but he's not the route runner as Davante Adams. But he is in the perfect spot because he is that slot god. And right now his value is being depressed because he missed games because of that ACL that he didn't actually tear and is perfectly healed now, and a suspension that's not actually going to happen. So you could still get Patrick Mahomes wide receiver 1. Xavier Worthy only relieves the pressure off Rashee Rice, and he could go back to his role of being a gadget guy or someone who pushes the defense deep. And then you get 2 other guys who may not be the wide receiver 1, but you have the opportunity to have 2 wide receiver 1s who finish top 12. Then those are set it and forget it type players. Or if you're playing best ball, they're going to consistently crack your roster. And like I said, if you haven't gone running back, Breece Hall is someone that I'm willing to target, but a lot of times I'm willing to fade this position and hammer it a little bit later. And I'm going to give you a strategy on that when we move to rounds 5 and 6. DeVonta Smith, Jameson Williams, TreVeyon Henderson, and Quinshon Judkins. Just like in my last video, I'm still hammering these rookie running backs. But more importantly, again, I told you I like to ping pong, especially if I'm going to be at the turn. Go get another pass catcher. So right here, I can have 3 top 3 pass catchers. I'm not worried about a vet on a new team, and if he's going to capture that same magic. I'm not worried about rookies and if they're going to usurp the other pass catchers that are ahead of them on depth charts. I've secured it, and now I'm going to extrapolate all the value that I can from running back right here. And then another good thing about DeVonta Smith and Jameson Williams, you heard me talk about Jalen Hurts. DeVonta Smith is an easy stack that you could get with Jalen Hurts, and why that's important is because it gives you plus estimated value. Now, you don't need to be a math wizard. You don't need to be a spreadsheet bro. You don't need to be in a Google Doc to understand what estimated value is. You just need to ask yourself some key philosophical questions that reach the same goal and conclusion. It's simple. If you've drafted Jalen Hurts already, who is more likely to catch a Jalen Hurts touchdown? Meaning that if Jalen Hurts has a good game and he throws a touchdown, you not only get the 4 points, let's just assume a standard PPR scoring, but you're going to get an additional 6 points, if not 7, for PPR on top of that, because you've captured the touchdown of the receiver. This doesn't include the yardage within the scoring. So that means that one play automatically goes from 4 points from a touchdown to, let's say, 10 or 11. That is adding estimated value. Now go back to my original question. If you're on the board and you took Jalen Hurts, who is more likely to capture that touchdown? DeVonta Smith, Jameson Williams, let's just make up something, Chris Olave. It's easy. It's DeVonta Smith because he's an Eagle. It's that simple. Keep it simple, stupid. Fantasy football doesn't have to be hard. Now, a lot of you are thinking, well, this is just a best ball tactic. This is so you secure points and key playoff spots. This is also applicable to redraft because in most cases, if your quarterback's going to have a bad matchup, that goes all the way down to your receivers and they're going to have a bad matchup. So If you think that Jalen Hurts is going to have a good game, most likely his receivers are going to have a good game. You're probably going to be taking him in and out of your lineup together. Now, rushing QBs have a little bit more point insulation, and I'm going to talk more on that later. But this is the key principle into stacking. And before I move on, put a pin in TreVeyon, Henderson, and Quinshon Judkins, because I'm going to hammer on why you should target some of these rookies over these other ones. But before we go any further, if you like content like this, hit the like and subscribe button. And me, Jim Coventry, Adam Sasowski, and the rest of the gang will give you all the information, tools, and videos to help you dominate your league in 2025. And you heard me say tools. If you want to have a chance to get in, I have a promo code for you to have access to all these tools, so you can look at all the cool data, ADP, and cheat sheets that we provide for you on RotoWire.com. Just go over to the website, use the code YouTube15, and just for our YouTube listeners, you have access to 15% off to our entire suite of data and articles on our website. Again, YouTube15, hit the like and subscribe, and we'll hop right back into it. Round 7 or 8, Kaleb Johnson, Odunze, Najee Harris, Brian Robinson. We're kind of in that same crux, and as we move down the board, less and less people are adhering strictly to ADP, and you're more likely to reach down. And here's why I have Kaleb Johnson here and kind of Henderson and Judkins in the same area to draft in. You want to bet on youth, especially in improved situations or rookies, over these young vets. That's why I'm targeting Odunze. Now, I do have Najee Harris and Brian Robinson on this list, but I'm telling you why they are unique and not so much like these other guys in this area. Khalil Shakir, Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard. All these folks are hitting their age apex, so you're acquiring and taking on the risk of them not meeting their ADP just because of the added factors that age puts in. More importantly, again, I said you don't have to think about math as much as asking yourself certain philosophical questions. Do you think someone who's young and in their prime will score more points by being in an improved situation? Or do you think that betting on a vet who's dealt with injuries on a new team is going to outperform their ADP? It's easy. The younger guys with better situations tend to have these breakouts. There isn't a term called a vet breakout. So someone like Odunze, who you could get on your roster, that is a top pass catcher, who now has Keenan Allen gone, a new head coach, a new offensive line for their all-star quarterback who they hope takes the next leap. I want to bet on him over Calvin Ridley, who yes has a new quarterback, but that's about it. And I know that's a big deal, but I'm just saying that a top 10 wide receiver, a wide receiver that was drafted top 10 with a quarterback who was drafted 1 overall, that's the type of bet I'm going to make. Moreover, I'm going to bet on a day 2 rookie running back that a team invested in that wants to win. And if I am going to bet on a vet, it'll be like Najee Harris, who Najee Harris has a clear path to be the RB1, or at least get meaningful touches in a high volume rushing offense. Or Brian Robinson Jr., who isn't as old as a lot of people think he is. He's the RB1, and he's in an exciting offense. I'm making these decisions easy for myself. Now, we'll finish off in rounds 9 and 10. Let's say you didn't get Jalen Hurts. Let's say you missed on Lamar Jackson. Let's say that maybe you just want a QB2 at this range. Here is the area that I'm taking QBs the most if I miss out on the high-end ones. Jared Goff, Justin Fields, Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud. But who do you pick? I've already talked to you about planning your stacks and how you approach it. If you're going to take these high-end rushers, look at who their pass catchers are later. If you're choosing a pass catcher you don't have a quarterback, think about who their quarterback is later and plan accordingly. Now, I said I like Jameson Williams because Jared Goff's a fun stack. I don't often draft Jared Goff, and most of the time where I've taken Jameson Williams, he's my wide receiver 2 or 3, so I don't feel the need to go out and reach for a stack. But Justin Fields, Caleb Williams, and CJ Stroud, these are the types of quarterbacks I like. Even let's say your Bo Nix. And here's the key thing. They are rushing QBs. I know a lot of people hate Kyler, and he was disappointing. But because you have rushing, you have a quarterback who is an independent scorer. Which brings me to my final point in picking a rushing QB versus a passing QB. For Joe Burrow to finish where he was as a QB, and the same thing for Baker Mayfield, they both had to lead the league in passing touchdowns and throw at a high volume rate to get even close to someone like Josh Allen. More importantly, those touchdowns, 2 points stack up. Same thing for rushing. You get less points for passing yards than you do for rushing yards. So these quarterbacks like Justin Fields holding a tremendous amount of value. Now, someone like CJ Stroud or Caleb Williams, they even still have a safer rushing floor in comparison to someone like Jared Goff or Brock Purdy. But more importantly, I like someone like CJ Stroud and Caleb Williams because, like I said, I see the ceiling for them to throw a lot of touchdowns. So that's the only way I'm touching some of these QBs. Brock Purdy's, the Justin Herberts, I'm taking them as QB2s. I don't like them as my QB1s because of those limited upside. So that is an ideal draft strategy, and that's reasoning through 10 rounds of a fantasy draft. If you like content like this, hit the like, subscribe button. I'm Jagger May. Love you. See you on the next one.